G'day everybody. Well, for today's little equipment autopsy, I figured I'd take the time to cut open a couple of refrigeration liquid line filter dryers and actually show you the components that are inside these, because these are actually welded up, you can't really open them. And also discuss what these actually do inside a refrigeration system, what they're used for, and the very important role that these actually play in removing contaminants and moisture from a refrigeration system to basically help extend the life and also the efficiency of the system. I've got two different types here, but they're the same thing essentially. They're just got, this one's a bit longer, so this would be for a larger system. This one's a little bit shorter, and it's got flared couplings versus the solder on. They've both got their pros and cons. These attachments, these are good because they're pretty leak tight if you're really good with your brazing, but they're a pain in the ass to remove because you've got to heat it back up again and pull your pipes out physically. While these ones are good as they're really easy to install, but they've got a tendency to leak, because if you get any little scratches or dents on that little seat there, it won't seal against your flare correctly, and then you'll end up with gas leaks and all sorts of other chaos. So cut this one open first, we'll have a look inside it, and then we'll do this big one. It should essentially be the same components, but you never know, things are always different these days. And by the way, these are made by Emerson Climate Technologies, UL listed. That's Underwriters Laboratories. It's an American company. It's a bit like the FCC, which we have here in Australia for almost all consumable goods. So they've got to go through that, and they've got to be tested and approved. So that's what that's all about. But anyhow, we'll get these open, we'll have a look. Okay, well here's the first one cut open. And, it's very simple in terms of what's inside these. We've got of course the outer casing, which is steel, and then it's got the two ends welded on. I just cut one of the ends off with the hacksaw, which took a little bit of work, but I got through it. The refrigerant going by the direction arrow on that, always look for that for when you're fitting these, because that's very important. Make sure it's going along with the arrow. Some of them it actually doesn't matter which way, but this one it does, so I always look for that. But it's coming in through there, through that little, bottom there, into that baffle, which is then allowing it to flow over this desiccant charge here, which has got a little bit chipped off of it. And as it's flowing around there, it's got to get forced in through here, because this is pressed up inside that casing. And this is basically removing any signs of moisture and any contaminants. As you can see, it's actually captured quite a bit. And it's basically, when they say drying the refrigerant, it's not turning it into gas, it's actually removing moisture and contaminants. So it's becoming dry refrigerant, still in liquid form, because it's liquid that's going through this, but it's dry in terms of no moisture. Because if you get moisture in your refrigeration system, that will work its way through into the condenser, and it'll sit in the condenser, in the coil, and it will basically, it'll be like putting your hand over part of it and blocking the flow off, where it will only become like 3/4 or half efficient. So these play a very important role in actually removing that moisture and keeping that gas pure inside that system. As well as that, you've got a few little physical filters. You've got this little brass one here, which I've unfortunately torn when I was getting it out. And then you've got this little strainer here on the very end. So there's really not a lot to these. Then you've just got a bit of a fiberglass up in the end there, and that's what actually holds this in place as well. So that's purely what's doing the work in this whole system. We'll get the other one open next, and we'll have a look inside that, see how similar or different it is. Okay, well for this second one I actually used the angle grinder to cut it open, and well, when I was questioning whether this one would actually be different, it is majorly different. This one actually has granules, unlike a solid charge. Whenever I touch this thing, more and more of the bloody things seem to want to come out. Like that. Must be under a fair bit of pressure in there. I can see there's a little bit of a sponge. So I don't know if the thing's completely full or if it's just that section. But I'll have to very carefully move this and clean these up. Because these are going to end up all over the floor otherwise. Okay, well, the presence of this compression spring inside the metal casing of this thing basically makes sense of the complete and utter mess this thing made before when I got the end cut off. Basically the way it's all set up inside is that you got this spring, then you got these two sort of absorbent pads which look a lot like fiberglass insulation. Wouldn't be surprised if that's what it actually is. And they're up inside that spring. And then on the very edge of that spring you've got this disc which has one of these on the spring side. These compress down significantly. Then you got another one, so that disc is in between. Then you got another one like that. This is the order that I actually pulled all of these components out. Then you got the messy stuff, the actual desiccant beads, which there's an entire baked bean tin full of them, so there's quite a bit in there, and that's why an awful lot came out when the end finally popped off. So you got all of that, and then you've got this, well, it looks like blotting paper. It's just another little disc. And then you got the end cap, which is welded on. But I use the angle grinder on this one. I'll probably, for next time, as a bit of improvement, I should actually cut the other end off, because that way it'll all contain it. The spring will just come out and leave all these in there. But it was the fact that when I cut through it, pushed the end off, as you saw, and then as the spring was pushing all of this stuff out, all of this was coming out with it. So that explains why that happened. But it's very interesting for the fact that it uses these instead of just the solid desiccant charge there. But that will be the same material. I don't actually know what it is it's made out of, but it's not toxic, otherwise I probably wouldn't be using it. And plus these are brand new, well, this one isn't, but these are modern dryers. They're not the really old ones, which would be full of asbestos, I imagine. But that is the contents of 2 refrigeration liquid line filter dryers. You don't normally see these in domestic refrigerators and things. There's just no point, and plus those things are made so cheaply that they're a throwaway item once something goes wrong. But these are mainly for larger air conditioners and any other refrigeration equipment. Some of the bigger ones, the industrial ones, actually have a sort of a flanged plate with the casing having its suction or its input and output, one on the side, one on the back. And then that front you can actually open up and you can remove the desiccant charge and replace it. I've seen quite a few of those, but then again they're actually a lot better because you don't have to remove all of this and then end up wasting all this steel sort of thing. But that's 2 liquid line refrigeration filter dryers. My camera's out of focus, so I apologise. If anybody's got any questions or comments or even a much more detailed description on how these work, be sure to put it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you all. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.